What up, guys? Welcome to the Son of Wonder. In preparation for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I thought we'd go back to where it all started so I could review Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. So let's conversationalize. Alright, guys, so for the record, it's not called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, it's just called Guardians of the Galaxy. Just wanted to clarify that. Also, I would like to clarify that if I sound under the weather, it's because I have been for the past few days, but I'm here now to record this video for you guys and talk about how awesome the first Guardians movie actually was. Alright, a few things I want to set the record straight on. First off, this movie has not just one of the best MCU openings of all time, it has one of the best movie openings of all time, period. It starts off with that gut-wrenching moment where Star-Lord, as a kid, is confronting his mom, who's dying, and then gets abducted by aliens, and then it finds a way to somehow naturally switch over to Star-Lord dancing to Come and Get Your Love as the Guardians of the Galaxy title appears on the screen. It starts off with him in his Walkman, puts it on his belt, pushes the button, and then starts dancing. It is one of the greatest movie openings of all time, period. End of story. It just, like, the soundtrack in general is one of the things that elevates this movie so much. Is just the fantastic old music. I am a old music lover, right? Even if you really consider it old music, I mean, which it really isn't. The 70s aren't that old. And this movie takes every opportunity it gets to play the best song for the situation at hand in this film. But no, this movie opening with Star-Lord dancing to that song, singing into a rat, dancing with a skeleton, doing all his Star-Lord stuff. Even the gadgets in this movie are so cool and interesting ideas, like that grenade he throws that sucks all the guys into it. Him arguing with the evil Ronin minion about his name. He's like, I'm Star-Lord, man, legendary outlaw. All of that makes it one of the best movie openings of all time. But that brings me to the characters. I think the main thing to take away from this movie is how endearing the characters are. Every single character, even if they are, like, jerkish at times, is still so insanely likable. Because, one, like, as an audience, we love, like, the outlaw type characters, which is why we love Han Solo in Star Wars. So we love Rocket Raccoon, we love Star-Lord, and we love all those types of characters. We also love the characters that have, like, a vendetta, the characters that have something to strive toward or a goal to accomplish, like Drax. And we also love just the cheerful, sweet characters that are kind of unassumingly so, like Groot. And then you have, like, cool assassin, like Gamora, who's, like, she has a drive too, like, complicated backstory and all that kind of thing. And it really just makes for a phenomenal team of superheroes, even though they're not, like, your conventional superheroes. But they are a team of phenomenal characters that really, across the board in all of fiction, they're not just great superheroes, they're just great protagonists across the board. Also, Ronan the Accuser in this movie, I don't think gets enough credit as a good bad guy. I think he is a really good bad guy because the very first scene that introduces him, he has a drive. They give him a motivation from the very first scene. He hates Xandar because somewhere along the historical line, the people of Xandar killed his father and killed his grandfather, and he wants vengeance on Xandar, and he's upset that the Kree signed a peace treaty with Xandar, and he wants to destroy all of Xandar. Motivation established, first scene you see him, and that is how you're supposed to introduce a bad guy. You're supposed to know what that bad guy wants from the first moment you see him, unless it's something more mysterious that you would like to reveal as the plot goes along to build intrigue. Sometimes they do that and it doesn't work, but I think it's really great that they just introduced the motivation from the beginning. Another thing that's really cool that this movie does that I don't think gets talked about enough is up to this point during the MCU, this movie, Guardians of the Galaxy, came out in 2014. Up to this point, we really hadn't gotten to see any of the wider galaxy or the universe inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We had seen, like, bits and pieces in the first Avengers. They teased Thanos, you know, they teased Chitauri, I never really know how to pronounce those. Chitauri, whereas the first aliens we saw, other than, I guess, if you count Thor, and all the stuff related to him. But this is really the first time in the MCU we get to explore all of the wider space stuff. And it kind of, inside the MCU, establishes that wider context that you need to really feel the scope and scale of Infinity War, as well as Endgame. When Thanos says he's going to snap half the universe out of existence, you see a chunk of that universe inside this movie, where otherwise, before in the MCU, you were always just limited to Earth. And I think that's really cool that they decided to establish that so early in the Marvel Cinematic Universe phases, because, again, it gave a wider context for the rest of the MCU going forward. It made things feel bigger, that there's, like, other stuff happening in the wider galaxy that's not just contained on Earth. And it also just serves this general story because it gives the Guardians sort of this Imperial, Star Wars Imperial Death Star type threat in Ronan the Accuser, trying to destroy a whole planet. And you have the Nova Corps, which is like this space government that's tied to all of that. They kind of do sort of that those Star Wars tricks of like, this planet has its own government, and this planet has its own way of living, and this is nowhere. This is like the head of a celestial. Really good world building inside this film that I don't think gets complimented enough because everybody's so focused on the characters themselves, which obviously they're fantastic. But the main thing that should be really complimented in this film, the humor. The humor is the impeccably well-balanced humor and seriousness. I think this movie, out of all of the MCU movies, does the best job at balancing those two things and making you laugh hysterically one moment and then crying in the other. This could have gone so terribly if they had done it the wrong way, which they have done it the wrong way plenty of other times. But in this movie, James Gunn found the formula to nail it. Chef's kiss with the way the humor was handled. Because so often, especially in Marvel movies nowadays, the humor just like, it doesn't make you laugh. It's just like, why were we in this serious moment right here? Something that could have had a lot of weight to it, and you just told a dumb joke, and then it's just gone. The seriousness is gone, the weight is gone. I'm not feeling anything now. In this movie, they're able to do the mortal opposite of that. Every joke elevates the scene instead of taking away from it. The main example I can give concerning this movie is the ending when Ronan is about to destroy Xandar with the Power Stone with his hammer, and Star-Lord just all of a sudden starts dancing and singing.
And bring it down hard. Someday, put it together.
What are you doing?
Dance off, bro. Me and you.
There are so many ways that could have been terrible, that could have not fit in the movie at all, but with what they established with the character of Star-Lord, with the situation at hand, and the fact that it actually ended up serving a purpose. That's the other thing. So much of the time in other movies when they'll tell a stupid joke that cuts the tension, it is an unnecessary joke. They were just trying to subvert your expectations, and in those moments, you don't want your expectations subverted. In this moment, you already know what's going to happen. Ronan is about to destroy Xandar. You don't want that to happen, so anything stopping that is a good thing. And the most unexpected thing in that case that you could think of happens when Star-Lord dances. So it's not just like, oh, that was really funny that he did that. It was just well-crafted storytelling for the characters they had already established, and especially in that moment of, he's distracting him. Star-Lord is distracting Ronan. It's not just a dumb joke to throw in there to subvert expectations. It subverts expectations and then raises them immediately after. That is how you do humor in a film. At least a film like this, a film that, even though is largely comedic, still is supposed to have some emotional weight to it. I mean, the opening of this movie, I remember before this movie came out, me and my family were watching the trailers and we're like, this looks stupid, this looks cheesy, we're not going to watch this. We did not go see the first Guardians in theater, which is one of my biggest regrets as concerning my pop culture history, is not seeing that movie in theater. But we had heard how good it was when it came out, and so we still didn't see it in theater, but my mom and dad came home with the Blu-ray copy of it, and we watched it on our TV, and we were blown away just from the opening scene, because we're expecting this dumb, goofy movie, and the opening scene is this kid not wanting to say goodbye to his mom, not wanting to confront the fact that his mom is dying, and she does die, and he's freaking out about it, and then he gets abducted by aliens while screaming, "Mom!" That's the opening of this largely comedic film. And again, in some way they could have had major tonal issues with this movie by doing stuff like that. And then again, mostly funny movie, they still treat the crazy stuff that's happening fairly seriously. Oh, there's this guy with this crazy astronaut helmet that's surveying this land and pulling up holograms of what things looked like before. And there's this guy named Ronan who is in this crazy spaceship with this Power Stone thing. It's yes, the MCU is known for its wink at the camera sort of humor, but they do that in just the right dose in this movie to where everything else, for the most part, oh yeah, that's Ronan. He's attacking people. You don't need to bring up how weird any of the stuff looks or is. And sometimes when they do need to bring stuff up, why does this talking tree just only say "I am Groot," they bring it up in the funniest way possible. But nobody ever stops to think why is that tree even talking? It's just they're making fun of his language. So again, they take enough seriously while still poking fun at the things that should be and are funny to watch being poked fun at. But added to that, the emotion in this movie is also handled really well, because these characters, as funny as they are, each have an emotional backstory and weight to them. Ironically, Rocket and Groot's backstories are the least explored in the film, and yet they are the most impactful characters of the film. And it's those subtle things that they do during the story where when Star-Lord and Rocket are brought into their cell at the Nova Corps prison, Star-Lord sees the mechanical whatever on Rocket's back, and it's obvious that he was experimented on. And you see that little bit of sympathy in Star-Lord, even though at the current time he hates Rocket and thinks he's a jerk and doesn't want to get along with anybody, he still has that little bit of sympathy for Rocket. And so little moments like that make it great. But also the ones that they explain more in detail are still really well written. Drax's lost family, that's his motivation for fighting Ronan. Rocket and Groot really don't have any friends at the beginning of this movie other than just each other. Star-Lord really doesn't trust people, and he's kind of only in it for himself. He's really only in it for the bounties he can collect. And Gamora starts out as an assassin, but she also is just kind of in it for the money at the end of the day. When she tries to steal the orb, she wants out when it comes to killing, genocidal killing civilizations, and she doesn't want to experience that anymore. But each character has their own nuance to them that makes them more likable and makes you want to root for them more, despite the fact that technically at the beginning of this movie, none of the characters are really good guys. All of them are really only in it for themselves until Star-Lord has the rousing speech near the end of the movie before the climax, when he finally just tells all of the Guardians, hey, we've all lost stuff. Now, life is giving us a chance to redeem ourselves from the stupid mistakes we've made and save this planet of people. And it's really cool to see, in any context really, but especially these characters, it's really cool to see all of these loners, these people who are only in it for themselves, unite for the common goal of, yeah, we're usually only in it for ourselves, but wiping out an entire planet of people and knowing we can do something about it, but not doing it, isn't right. And that's just general morality that they experience, but at the same time, it's still so inspirational to see these characters come out of their shells and be selfless for a change. Even just small moments of virtue and heroism pay off really well in this movie, like when Star-Lord saves Gamora, and even the little moments where Groot gives the flower to the little girl that comes up to him in nowhere. Those small moments really just make you like the characters just a little bit more, to where by the end of the movie you just absolutely love the characters, and it's only the first film. Truly, I do believe that not just because this is the first film, this is the best interpretation and most well-written the Guardians have ever been inside the MCU. Even with all of their appearances after this movie, this one is still the best, because the story structuring for one, and the general writing for the other. And I am definitely in the same boat as everybody else when Groot decides to encompass the rest of the Guardians with his roots as Ronan's ship is crashing. And Rocket's like, why are you doing this? He's like, we are Groot. That line, across the board, I think this is like one of the few things that most MCU fans agree on. That is one of the greatest lines in the MCU. Those 3 words, we are Groot. And he sacrifices himself for his friend. And Groot is like the only one of the Guardians at like the beginning of the movie to really show any genuine virtue. So him sacrificing himself for the rest of the Guardians is really a payoff of that. And Rocket's reaction to it is so gut-wrenching when he's just hugging that stick at the end of the movie and bawling his eyes out. This tough, trigger-happy raccoon is sobbing at the death of his friend. And Drax comes to pet him, comes to comfort him, even though before Rocket had gotten offended that people were calling him a pet. But he can tell that Drax is trying to comfort him, so he accepts it. Moments like that just make the movie so much kind of like wholesome in a way. Like there is still some crassness in this movie, but still, generally this movie has a wholesome, uplifting vibe to it. And I mean, Drax's story as well, him being so untrusting of Gamora specifically, and rigid at the beginning of when you see him, and him accepting the rest of the Guardians as friends. After Groot sends those lights out of his arm, those plant lights, I don't know what they're technically called, but when I love the part so much where Drax is telling the rest of the Guardians you are my friends and I'm grateful to fight beside you. And he shoots Nebula after Nebula's bagging on Gamora, and he's like, nobody talks to my friends like that. It's just, again, like any other movie, it could be really cheesy, it could be really dumb, it could be really stupid. This movie, they find ways to set things up. Really, it's all about the setup in this movie that's so good. And nail it at the end. Every character gets a proper arc. Star-Lord especially. Beginning of the movie not being strong enough to take his mom's hand. And then kind of seeing her in Gamora as Gamora is offering her hand to him when their power combined can wield the Power Stone and destroy Ronan at the end of the movie. Payoffs like that, it's so good. This really is one of the best movies of the MCU by far, and will remain one of the best forever. So that is my review of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I am really excited to see Guardians of the Galaxy 3, see what they do with each of these characters. I'm hoping that Guardians 3 can capture that same magic that the first one had in abundance. So thank you guys for watching. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And that's a wrap.